Each time we talk about the informality of Nollywood, we begin to talk about, first of all, the actors. The fact that most of the actors or the key players of Nollywood are gate crashers. That's one thing we begin to talk about. And then we begin to talk about the fact that Nollywood seems not to have kept the record so well that it may not have a taxable entity. You may not be able to tax Nollywood. Do you understand? Those are some of the reasons. And then the fact that Nollywood as an industry seems to lack a physical destination. It doesn't have a destination. People began to look at Nollywood as an informal industry because of some of these allusions. It doesn't have a physical destination, just like Los Angeles. You want to go to Hollywood, you have a physical destination. Nollywood doesn't have. A couple of people come to Lagos thinking Lagos is the destination to Nollywood. And of course, a couple of things are happening in Asaba. So the fact that it doesn't have a physical destination doesn't seem to keep their record. And then most times the informality stems from the production, the funding. The fact that though the funders of Nollywood seem to fund Nollywood from their personal pockets. How Nollywood started. Believed to have started strongly after the commercial success of Living in Bondage in 1992, right? Somebody had asked about filmography. In the article I sent to you, discovered that at some point I was trying to review films and their remakes and trying to look at Nollywood ecosystem. I was reviewing films and remakes, meaning that if Living in Bondage was produced in 1992, a remake of Living in Bondage was produced in 2019, where you now see the digital intrusion and the digital revolution I spoke about. And then, when you look at the funding of the 1992 Living in Bondage and the funding of 2019 Living in Bondage, you begin to understand the extent Nollywood has gone in formalizing its activities. So in essence, Nollywood actually started as an informal industry. First of all, being sponsored by electronic dealers. Electronic dealers. People where they sell television, fridge, and the rest. In Alaba, in Onisha, in Aba. These were the founders of Nollywood. And then, who were the directors? Directors were those who actually retired or who actually were retrenched from NTA, and some other men who had just finished, their theater arts program in various universities, particularly University of Port Harcourt, and a few from University of Jos. These were the people who came and then approached the electronic dealers, and the electronic dealers began to fund Nollywood. And then, as they were funding this Nollywood, they were taking charge of the entire ecosystem, from the ideology or the ideality or the conceptualization. You see OJ production. He comes up with a story and calls a director. See the story I want to tell. The director calls somebody that will write. Tell the story to that person that will write. That person will write it. You see that the ecosystem has started. Look at the chance of people. And then they decide. And of course, that same OJ production, OCR Fasten, they could say, okay, let's now cast at that time, let's cast Genevieve Nnaji, let's cast Omatala, let's cast Ramsey Noah as A-list casters, as in what we call table casting or fire cabinet casting. Because you've seen what they have done before, you don't need to put them on tryout method, right? And then, of course, they are called EPs, executive producers. Whereas the directors are called the directors. Most of the directors double as the producers. The producers are the people who are the administrative wing or managers of those productions. Most times, the executive producers, these are the Onitsha marketers, the Alaba marketers. They will give their money to the executive, to the producers who could be their younger brother or their friends, who will in turn release the money to the director. So the director, apart from that fire cabinet casting, we will now call open tryout casting. That was how people like you, Ledoche, through open, casting, we are discovered. You understand? And then they go to location and of course do the shooting. Remember, production is in three phases: the pre-production, the production, and the post-production. By the time they are coming back, most of the directors are what we call method on scene directors. There are two categories of directors basically. There is auteur director, there's method on scene director. Because they are method on scene director, the tapes they had come back from the location. Most times they give it to the OCR person, to the OJ production, because OJ production already had a studio, already had an editor. And that director is moving into the next job. Whereas the editing is going on, that's the post is going on. And then when the post is ready, he comes to make his final corrections. And the film is replicated into the CD and pushed directly into the market. Pushed directly into the market. Are we communicating? And these were before the revolution of the digital era. So what I gave you guys to read were posts or those were posts, what's it called? Analog era. After the analog, as the digital impact became, production and everything in Nollywood changed. But at this era, you could actually say that Nollywood is informal industry. You can actually say that Nollywood is what? But the formality of Nollywood started when Nollywood began to establish guilds, different guilds and associations. I am a member of the Directors Guild of Nigeria. So I am a certified director in Nigeria, in Nollywood. And if you are not a member of the Directors Guild of Nigeria, and you are not a member of any guild in Nigeria, you are not recognized as a Nollywood practitioner. So have you seen the sense of that formality in Nollywood? Are we communicating? Now, because Nollywood believe that there is so much to be done with formality. Because during that informality, you could give a producer, the executive producer could give a producer 2 million to go and produce a film. The producer will use it and go and marry his third wife. And nothing will happen to him because there's nobody calling him to question. So by the time we began to form guilds and associations, this happened from 1999 downwards. Actors Guild of Nigeria, Producers Guild of Nigeria, Directors Guild of Nigeria, and the rest began to emerge. Therefore, you can no more give somebody money and he squanders it. And then Actors Guild of Nigeria began to insist that everybody, every actor, whether we're cappers or not, should be paid. Then you begin to see a sense of formality in the industry. And that formality became so much entrenched when you began to now, with the introduction of the digital era, when you can actually say the number of films. Of course, when you upload a film, and that film has up to 1 billion views, will you deny it didn't make 1 billion views? You can't deny it because it's there. When you put a film on Netflix, you know how many views he has, gotten. So all these began to give formality in the industry. So When we say assess Nollywood, because that's one of the questions you're going to ask, you're going to answer. You should be assessing Nollywood, the ecosystem of Nollywood, with reference to the formality, its informality, and formality. You should be able to look at the fact that at the initial period of Nollywood, there seemed a sense of informality. These days, somebody gives me a script to write. The first thing he wants me to sign is non-disclosure deal. You understand? We'll sign a non-disclosure deal, and I'll sign it. After signing it, then he tells me the story. So it means that as much as the project is working on, I will not be able to talk to my wife about now this film where they write. See how the story. How do we make this story? Because I've signed that deal. If that thing leaks, it becomes a problem on me. It's a breach. And again, I've been issue. You discover that you pay actors. People like Jim Ike will collect 10 jobs. You go enter here, do one. Say, make I go cough, come out, go another location. And you could not hold him down because there was no contract. That was when the industry can be touted to be an informal industry. But today, even if you are hiring a worker pass, in quotes, the people we call worker pass, she wanna know the people where they call worker pass. Huh? People where we say in location, they will say, okay, Genevieve is coming to teach in class, is coming to talk to this person. But there's no way she can talk to this person alone. Therefore, we need this class to be filled with people. People will go just sit down. They say action, laugh, you laugh. I say bone, bone. And everybody walk out, you walk out. Even if you are hiring those type of people, you must have a contract with them. That's the extent in which Nollywood has gotten to. So if you are asked to look at, assess the production ecosystem in Nollywood, with particular reference to its formality or informality, you should be looking at you should be looking at what happens before pre-digital time in Nollywood. What happens? How do they engage people in um, how do they engage people in what? Okay, first of all, you look at the funding. We talked about funding, right? Pre-production funding. How is Nollywood film funded? You look at pre-digital era and digital era. Pre-digital era, the analog stage. We have stated that who funds film? Electronic dealers. These are the people who no bank attempted to fund film. At best, there was Amsterdam Malta Box Office, who was funding film through a man called Izu Ojuku. Are we communicating? Izu Ojuku. That was the best Nollywood got towards formality then. And of course, a couple of films like Setanda, White Waters, and the rest came on board that time. Now, formality in the real sense started, like I said, first of all, when we now saw the need to begin to have various guilds and associations. By the 2001, as we stated in the article I gave you, discovered that there were networks around, right? There were networks around, and beyond these networks that went ahead to formalize Nollywood with the introduction of all these social media platforms. You remember that by the time African Magic started buying Nigerian films, Nollywood films, to exhibit them on through their channel. By the time they started buying these Nollywood films to exhibit them through their channels, it came with one thing. And what is that thing? They began to, at some point, they began to come up with the standard in which they want to buy. Ab initio, the agreement was that they will buy films that have been marketed. But these producers, who we are being given possibly 3 million naira to shoot a film, could now sell an old film, 5 million naira. Then it was actually in dollars. Could now sell an old film about 5 million naira. Whereas the EPs could give them 3 million naira to shoot a new film. So what they now decided to do is to now go straight to the African Magic and now began to sell new releases at 5 million naira. And because African Magic was overwhelmed by the number of films that came, they now drew yardstick for accepting new films. And those yardstick, first of all, added more formality to our industry. Questions?